Want to welcome everybody to Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close. Before we get into the content of the show this evening, and we're recapping a couple of exciting, tense, well, I shouldn't say two exciting, intense games. One exciting, intense game and another very enjoyable game for Hawkeye fans. We do want to thank our sponsors, though. First, Iowa Floor Covering down in Des Moines. If you haven't heard about this company, if you're a contractor or a DIYer, or you're starting a new flooring project in your home, contact the guys down at IFC in Bondurant. Visit iowafloorcovering.com and to check out their Tough Core Click Together 4.5 millimeter waterproof vinyl flooring. It's available at a special rate, $269 per foot for our listeners. Use the /DIY. That's iowafloorcovering.com/DIY or give them a call at 515-379-7000. Also want to thank Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm. Rates have never been this low with auto insurance, saving people lots of money down on Fleur Drive in Des Moines, right in the metro. Give Brad and his team a call, 515-256-6480, 515-256-6480. It's totally free to get a free, I keep using that word, free quote on auto, home, renters, business, and life insurance. Brad and his small team, they spend countless hours taking care of their customers and reviewing policies and coverages annually to make sure they're meeting their customers' needs. Again, 515-256-6480 or online at bradvanmeter.com. Also, Iowa Smokehouse, tasting is believing with their meat sticks, their jerky, their salsas, their ketchups, their steak bites, their barbecue sauces. It's all great. And see how that slogan is absolutely the truth. Tasting is believing with Iowa Smokehouse. Use the code Hawkeyes at iowasmokehouse.com to receive 15% off your order. And for every $50 order that you submit on iowasmokehouse.com, you'll get free shipping to your doorstep. Again, iowasmokehouse.com. Use the code Hawkeyes for 15% off your order. And without further ado, the man, the myth, the legend, There he is.
The myth for sure. The other two, I'm not so sure.
We used Gary. People over the last couple of weeks that I've convinced them that you are a myth. It's been a while. It's good to see you, sir. How you feeling?
Good to be back. Feeling great.
Good to have you here. You've been missed dearly, and
I've missed the show.
well, we got a lot of basketball to talk about. We're here to talk not only about the Iowa men last night, but of course we're fresh off an Iowa women's basketball beatdown on the Northwestern Wildcats, 110-74, a peacock game this evening over in Evanston. Impressive display for the Hawkeye women. A lot of players stepping up and making shots, and a runaway in that second half. But of course, Gary is our insider as it relates to the ins and outs of the men's game, and quite a game yesterday in Bloomington, Gary.
Yeah.
You know, Iowa falls down by 17 relatively early. They storm back to at least make it respectable. I think from a mental standpoint, I'm sure that gave them a boost getting the game back within, 9 or 10 at halftime. And then were able to make a push in that second half, actually took the lead, just kind of ran out of gas. And I thought defensively had some breakdowns late. Just your thoughts on the performance. A tough place to play in Bloomington.
It's always a tough place to play. You know, getting off to the slow start really came back to haunt them. I think if they could have kept the game a little bit closer early, then their run in the second half could have maybe given them a sizable lead. It's a tough loss because Indiana is not very good, and they're both kind of right there with the same record and with a bunch of other teams at 5-6 losses, and it'd be interesting to see if anybody can separate themselves. That would have been a terrific road win. You got to give them credit for coming back. Coming back 17 on the road is almost impossible to do, and actually took the lead. And basically, Indiana made a few more plays late than Iowa did and escaped with a much-needed win. So tough loss.
Here's how we're going to do things tonight, folks. We are going to spend the first portion of the show talking. I really want to hone in on the men's game last night because we didn't have a live post-game show last night following the game. I've got a few points to hit on. I want to get Gary's take on these, and we'll get some callers involved. And, of course, we will talk about the women. Pretty routine victory for Caitlin Clark and the women this evening, but we will cover it. But as it relates to the men's game, Gary, again, we've missed you here recently on the show, and there have been moments this season, I think, especially as we've gotten into conference play, where it's felt like the season, I don't want to say the season as a whole, but their NCAA chances were going to start to lean by the wayside, if you will. But then they go on the road and, take care of business in Ann Arbor. They rattled off 3 straight a couple of weeks ago that kind of got them back in the conversation. Now I think they're back in a situation where they need to win some games to feel good heading into the kind of the final stretch last month of the year. And these are 3 winnable games coming up on the schedule. But as it relates to the Big Ten season as a whole, you mentioned the conference standings. I mean, there are a ton of teams. I don't remember the last time I've seen as many teams 5-5, 6-4, 4-6, 4-5 right now. So, like, in a sense, yeah, maybe the conference isn't as good as it normally is. But I still think Iowa sitting there at 4-6, they're still in that pack with an opportunity to get in the tournament. Like the Big Ten's not going to get 4 or 5 teams in. I still believe thoroughly they're going to get at least 7 to 8 teams in the tournament. Maybe you don't agree with that, but how important are these next 3 games against very winnable opponents?
They're all important now. I don't know if they're going to get that many. I really haven't looked at it that closely. We've only got 3 teams ranked, so your chances of getting big wins down the stretch aren't as many because there just aren't as many ranked teams in the league. That may be the case for other leagues as well, but so they're in there with a bunch of other teams that they've got to try to separate themselves. So I'm not going to say all of them are must wins, but there's a lot on that slate that they've got to take care of because they're going to run out of games and they got some tough games coming up too that they're hard to win. So the ones that are a little more winnable become even more important.
Not to look too far ahead, but they play Ohio State Friday. That's at home. That's a game you got to win.
Absolutely.
You're at home against a middling Ohio State team. Ohio State right now is in that same tier as Iowa. So basically it's a replica. I know different teams, but this is basically a replica of what we saw Tuesday night against Indiana, except that was a road game. So
Yeah,
is it fair to say when you're playing these other teams in your tiers, so to speak, you better be taking care of business at home and hopefully steal a game or two on the road?
I totally agree. Yeah, they've got to win. That's a must win.
So win that game, then they travel to Penn State. Penn State's 9-11, 3-6 in the conference. I would say that is close to a must win because they've lost 3 games at home. If you're going to steal a few on the road, they've stolen 1 at Michigan. But boy, you better be able to beat Michigan on the road, Penn State on the road, maybe Rutgers on the road. Teams that are hovering at or below 500. And then that third game on the schedule, home against Minnesota. Again, another middling team at 13-7, haven't played a tough schedule, below 500 in the conference. They got a chance to win 3 straight here, Gary. And then, of course, they get at Maryland, home against Wisconsin, at Michigan State. Tougher stretch. I think these next 3 are crucial games.
I agree totally. I don't think there's any doubt. Penn State did beat Wisconsin on their court, but they haven't won since, and they're losing tonight at Rutgers. So, yeah, the problem is they're all pretty even. So it's it comes down to little things and making a play, and I would guess that they all could be fairly competitive and close, and they just like the Indiana game was, and they're going to have to make some plays down the stretch. But yeah, this is a huge 3-game stretch for them.
As we've brought out already, it's been a little while since you and I have talked formally here on the show. And so I want to kind of give you my 2 cents on what I've seen, how this team has kind of evolved in my eyes over the past few weeks. I've made the statement several times in the show, and I'm anxious to see if you agree with it. To me, Tony Perkins has established himself as the best player on this team right now, without question, in my mind. And kudos to Peyton Sand for kind of following suit over the last couple of contests. But Tony, for the first time, it feels like, for the first time in his career, he is consistently giving them 20 a night. And he may not hit 20 every night, but I mean, there's not some roller coaster on the offensive end from him. And he's not some lockdown shooter from outside, but he's really good in the mid-range. He gets to the free throw line. He makes his free throws. Late in the game, I want him to have the ball. He's the guy I want with the ball in his hands, and he's not their best shooter. I'm anxious to hear if you agree with that. And then the other part of this is Ben Krickey's going through a little bit of a slump. It feels like I don't know if it's just, Big Ten play. It's his first year it's only year in the conference, coming from Valpo, and maybe a little bit of a wall he's hitting, kind of like a freshman wall. Just your thoughts on Tony and Ben.
Yeah, I'd agree with you completely. I think Tony has established himself as one of the better guards in the league. I think Peyton is doing a terrific job. I think he's right there with him. And then it's pretty inconsistent from there on out, and that's one of their problems. They got very little from their bench last night, which didn't help. Everybody goes through some stretches, so I'd like to think Ricky will play himself out of that. But that's where Owen Freeman's got to come through and stay out of foul trouble and pick guys up. They just haven't had enough players, other than the 2 that we mentioned, pick people up when they need them. And in tight games, that can mean the difference between winning and losing.
And I know Michigan's not a very good basketball team, but we saw the difference. We saw the difference with Owen Freeman staying out of foul trouble. When he's able to go the distance, like we saw against Michigan,
very important.
They're a different
and that'll
team.
be on the scouting report of every team they play. You can get that kid in foul trouble, go at him, get him out of the game. If they lose him, they don't have much behind it. And so he's got to get better at avoiding the dumb, silly fouls that they get him and the team in trouble.
You and I didn't get to do post game for Iowa, Maryland. Maybe, if Iowa ends up not making the tournament this season, I think that will be the game we look back at and say, that was one you had to have.
Mm-hmm.
Especially just how the game played out and losing it in the final minutes and the way Jameer Young kind of just took over. Defensively they had breakdowns, but man, Owen Freeman, his foul trouble in that game killed them. And I had some people on the show, make the comment, I don't think the refs were real fair to Iowa. I said, you know what? That kid's got to learn to stay vertical. He had a couple of really dumb fouls out near the perimeter where he stays vertical all the way through a shot, and then at the last second comes down and smacks the elbow. And I know, I mean, I've played basketball, not the college level, but it's hard to maintain verticality. But how do you teach that? And as a freshman, is that a normal thing to have to overcome?
Well, I think first off, he's used to be just dominating people in high school with being bigger and taller and more athletic, and so now all of a sudden you're going against guys that are as good or better in terms of quickness. You just can't whack down. If you whack down, it's going to get called a foul almost 90% of the time, and so he's got to keep his arms straight up, his chest out, and stay on the floor and just kind of stay between his man and the basket and make him shoot over the top of him. And you know, fouls are really important. I mean, teams that get teams in the penalty earlier. We saw the game tonight, Purdue and Northwestern. Purdue, even though they shot horribly from the free throw line, had like 40 free throws, and Northwestern had like 15, and that's the difference in the game. And I know Edey's a big part of that, but your ability to play good defense without fouling is huge, especially against real good teams. And even against bad teams, you give them a chance to keep the game close, which is what happened with Indiana. Fortunately, Indiana made as many dumb fouls as Iowa did, and gave Iowa a chance to win the game. We just didn't make enough plays down the stretch. So they got to play smarter, and it starts with him. They need him on the court.
I want to come back to that real quickly. What is it about Northwestern that gives Purdue so much trouble?
They're well coached. Their guards are terrific. They play. They don't beat themselves. They take care of the ball. They get good shots. They execute. They're pretty good defensively, and they don't beat themselves. And that's the first thing you got to do to win, especially when you're not as good as the other team, or maybe as talented, is you got to at least not beat yourself and give yourself a chance to win. And a lot of times with turnovers, with bad shots, with fouls, with bad defensive breakdowns, you don't even give yourself a chance to win, and you end up losing the game.
I'll tell you, when I found out that Chase Audige was going to be leaving, I thought that team was going to take a step back. I thought they were close last year to being able to make a run in the NCAA tournament. I think they got a really good shot at being a dangerous, scary 8-9 seed. I don't know where they're projected right now, but wherever they end up with their guard play behind Barnheiser and Boo Buie, they're a scary team in March. To a team that you would think, and a guy like Zach Edey is going to give you all kinds of nightmares from a matchup standpoint. They match it and then some.
Yeah.
So,
well, they went to the Sweet 16 last year. It's a good basketball team.
I guess I forgot they made it the Sweet 16 last year. No Big Ten team made it farther, right?
Right. So, no, you're exactly right.
Back to Owen Freeman real quick. I totally agree with you. And it's funny, you and I have had conversations over the last few years about this, the whole shot blocking thing. And early in the year, we all praised Owen Freeman for his ability to block shots. But you notice what's happening now. Players are starting to get him up in the air, and then he's coming down. And even in some cases, what you have described before on this very show, he'll get a shot block, but then it's recovered by the opponent for an easy layup, or they just fake him, get him up in the air, and then draw a foul +1.
Right.
So,
like the kid at Indiana, there's no reason they shouldn't have fouled that kid out of the game. He had 8, the team had 8 blocks. He probably had 6 of them, 5 of them, the Ware kid. I mean, you just twitch your eyeball, he'll leave his feet to block your shot. You get him up in the air and you just lay him out, and you're going to the free throw line. He's going to the bench. And, that's it's easier said than done. You got to slow down. You got to shot fake. You got to get a good base. You got to do all those things. But, if I'm playing Indiana, that's one of the first things on my scouting report. I'm going to shot fake that kid 2-3 times, and I guarantee you we'll get him to the bench because he just leaves his feet, just constantly. And if you don't take advantage of that, if a team blocks 8 shots, you better be getting some free throws. And Iowa got a few, but I think Iowa could have shot 30, 35 free throws if they'd have been a little more effective inside with shot faking and getting guys off their feet.
I'm to a point now, and I'm curious, do coaches feel this way, where if my guy or a big on Iowa's team, say it's Owen Freeman or Ben Krikke, goes up and does not sustain verticality, I don't care if he gets all ball or not. I'm just going to say, you know what? You didn't maintain verticality. I'm not arguing a call. Like, just learn to maintain verticality. I understand there's times to block a shot. I get that. But I've just gotten so tired of that. Seems to be more of an issue this year. Maybe it's just because of Owen and Owen's growing pains as a freshman.
Yeah.
But with Iowa basketball. And go ahead.
The best time to block a shot is coming off your guy. If you can make sure you can get it. If you can't get it, then chances are your guy's going to get the offensive rebound and put it in if it's missed. It's really difficult to block a shot on the guy that you're actually guarding without fouling some of the time. And that's where Owen's getting his freedom. It's when he's going one-on-one with a guy in a post and he's trying to block his shot. So, for every block shot you get, if you can chest up and not draw and not get a foul, it's just not worth it. It's just the risk and reward, with a few exceptions, is just not there. And we've seen it with him. I mean, there's nothing more exciting than to watch a great block shot. I mean, the Indiana guys had some unbelievable block shots yesterday. He gets the crowd all jacked up and things like that. But hey, I see that. I'm just licking my chops. Hey, next time I'm gonna give him a shot fake. He's gonna go up in the air and I'm gonna get a piece of him and get the team in a penalty and get him to the bench and get points for my team.
That guy is an athletic freak.
Some
of the plays, he looks like a smaller vision.
But he's not a pro. I mean, my God, he's weak and no offensive game, and he's got a long way to go, in my opinion.
He looks like a smaller version of Wembayama, though.
He does, but not as skilled.
No,
I mean that kid's
definitely not
incredibly skilled, and I think he's a bit soft. I mean, he's fallen down, and I haven't seen him a lot. He's been out the last 2 or 3 games, so I haven't seen him a lot. But I wasn't overly impressed, other than his athleticism, and I mean he's got a chance. But I don't know how hard he doesn't look like a hard worker kid while he's playing. Now I could be dead wrong, but he's got a ways to go, in my opinion.
And I don't think it's any coincidence. I named a couple of games specifically: Michigan, Purdue, Maryland. When Iowa goes up against the better of the Big Ten bigs, they have struggled. And I don't think you look any further than Owen Freeman being on the floor or not being on the floor.
Right.
So. That's going to be when you go up against the Purdues and the Marylands with Julian Reese and, go around the conference, a storyline to follow for sure. Let's go to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. We got Doug online. Doug, welcome to the show.
Yeah, long time, Coach.
Hey, Doug, good to see you.
Good to see you. A lot of things. I guess I want to address something that I don't think Corey's addressed. Fran passed Tom Davis for winning as coach at Iowa. I have mixed feelings about that. I wanted to give one story. My mom still talks about it. They dropped me off for basketball camp in '98. My mom goes waving to Tom Davis, and he waves back to her, and she still talks about it. But the issue was the next year in '99, she does the same thing to Steve Alford. He didn't wave back at her, so she don't like Steve. That might say something about our program, but that's a whole other story. But what do you think about Fran's been here 14 years. A couple years ago knew he probably would pass Dr. Tom. I do not think he's as good a coach as Dr. Tom, and most Hawkeye fans would agree with that. We wish that you guys would have gotten a 14th and 15th year. Any comments on that?
I would have liked to have gotten a 14th or 15th year too.
That's what I meant. Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't think he would have not had you come back.
I'm happy for Fran. I think he's done a great job. They do it the right way. They abide by the rules. The players love playing for him. It's hard to win in the Big Ten. It's just hard. And you see it now. I mean, when is the last time you've seen, maybe never happened, where Michigan, Michigan State, Ohio State, and Indiana aren't even ranked. I mean, it's hard to win in this league. And he consistently wins more than his fair share of games, and he does it the right way. And everything I've heard in terms of players, they love playing for him, and he's a great role model. And so he's done a really, really fine job.
Well, and you go through some of those coaches. Michigan might be getting rid of Howard. Who knows? A lot of coaches are. Ohio State's went through a couple coaches. You go through it. Fran's out. outlasted like guys that like the Butler. What's his name?
Yep.
A lot of those guys. What's the Butler's coach's name? Used to be Ohio State's coach.
Who's that?
Thad Matta.
Yeah, Thad Matta's at Butler.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He outlasted a lot of coaches. Crane. I don't know what that says or doesn't say, but I
agree.
Yeah, I shared this, and I have just after, as I said, after the loss at Wisconsin, they need to win 3 straight, and those are 3 must-win games. I know a lot of people want to talk about the women here, so I'll try to get off the thing, but those are 3 games that they're predicted to win by the analysis. That doesn't mean anything, but
right.
Those are 3 games, 2 home games. I'm very curious what the crowd will be like. I was very surprised that Indiana. It just shows what type of fan base they had. I was very surprised how Assembly Hall was yesterday. Now, I wasn't there. Obviously, it was on TV. Team had the exact same record as Iowa, had probably the exact same chance to make the NCAA as we did, and they seem very ruckus.
Well, it's also that is a blue blood, is it not?
Yeah. Yes.
I mean, there's a big difference between Indiana basketball and Iowa.
But the excuse always is for us is we're not a blue blood. Wouldn't they be more disappointed not making the NCAA than us?
Say that again.
Okay. Wouldn't a team that has a better tradition be more disappointed in not making the NCAA than a team that hasn't made the NCAA regularly over the last 20 years? Well, we have over the last 6 because of Korean. I don't know if what I'm saying makes any sense. But I just hope I'm going to be at the game on Friday. It's a 6 p.m. game. I'm hoping that one of the areas it isn't just – I wish the students were – because the students seem very into the game in Bloomington. I hope the students are there. And I'm going to go back to a point before I get off. We need a 3rd guy to step up, and that needs to be Ben or Owen. They talk about big 3 for a reason. It's easy to shut down 2 guys. It's hard to shut down 3. I think if we can get the 3rd guy going, it will help because
no doubt.
Again, I think Peyton started getting guarded really hard, and it just they needed Ben to hit a couple of those mid-range shots. What was he like? 1 for 7 at one point, 1 for 8 at one point.
Yeah.
He has like 5 of those mid-range shots that he made during Creighton. He's made other times. A couple of those go down. Who knows? It's a different game. But I'm going to judge the team after these 3 games and see where they're at.
Good games.
Yeah. And thank you for taking my call. It's good to see you, Coach.
Good to see you too.
Yeah. Like I said, it's always great to be a Hawk. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep. Appreciate it, Doug.
Doug's a good man.
I know you've made the comment that you're not sure the Big Ten gets more than 5 or 6 teams in. Harpo brings that up, 6 teams. Man, I have to see that before I believe it. I mean, I just have seen the committee consistently.
I think this year might be a little different. I hope I'm wrong. I haven't looked at the ratings and things like that, all that kind of stuff. But I think right now we've got 4 good teams, 2 really good teams, maybe 3. And after that, it is up in the air.
Okay,
Michigan State had no chance against Wisconsin in a huge game. They were never in it. I'm shocked how they're playing. Now they beat Michigan, but that was at home, and Michigan's horrible. So they've got work to do. Nebraska's got a big game tomorrow, playing Wisconsin at home. So I think those 4 are the only ones that are looking real comfortable now. I think after that, if I were Michigan State or Nebraska, I'd be a little nervous.
Do want to quickly run through the box score for Iowa Northwestern on the women's side this evening. First of all, our RTI Threads player of the game could have went with several different options this evening because Caitlin Clark was once again really good, especially late. But Hannah Stolke stepped up in a big way on just 9 shot attempts, had 17 points, 9 boards. And these are the types of numbers I think she can be a 18 and 10 type of big inside for Iowa, even though she's kind of playing out of position at the 5, as Kasheen Alexander's talked about on the show. But she played phenomenal this evening. And certainly this is not a great Northwestern team. But Iowa did a nice job feeding her the ball. And, we've kind of seen just a change here and there as it relates to who's the five, who's the minute hogging five, if you will, between Addison O'Grady and Sharon Goodman. And lately it's been O'Grady. So that front court's going to be extremely important and consequential to the hopes and dreams of this team to make it to another Final Four. Stolke had 17, and she was the starting big. As I said, O'Grady came in, gave him 7 hard minutes. Goodman just 3 minutes, so not a ton. They're going to go small as long as they can. Sydney Falter came off the bench, played really well again. 7 boards off the bench for Sydney. Molly Davis had 3 points. Gabby Marshall, 4 big threes for Gabby. Good to see her bounce back. She's been up and down, but we've said that before, and she seems to make big shots at big times. And it was nice to see Kate Martin bounce back with 16 points, 5 of 9 from the field, including a perfect 2 of 2 from 3, 5 boards and 4 assists, including and just 1 turnover for Iowa's super senior Kate Martin. And the Hawkeyes run away with it again. RTI Threads player of the game, Hannah Stolke. And then from last night, Peyton Sanford, 26 points, 8 rebounds for the men. Gary, we could have went a couple of different directions. As I've talked about, Tony has been really consistent here of late. He had 22 points, 4 rebounds, and 3 assists, along with 3 steals. He's been getting his hands, those long arms in the passing lanes here of late, and he's avoided getting burned for the most part. But he's just getting more and more confident. And you can see that as a senior. You hope you get him back next year. But I do think, Gary, I don't want to jump the gun here. They are not in the tournament conversation right now. If they win the next 3, I will say what I said at the end of the last winning streak they had. They'll be back in consideration, back in the talk, and rightfully so. And as crazy as this sounds, you can tell me I'm wrong, but the makeup of this team might have a better chance of making it to the second weekend because of a guy like Tony Perkins. When's the last time you could say Iowa's best player has been a guard, a ball handling guard? I mean, it's been Luka, it's been Keegan, it's been Chris, it's been Joe Wieskamp. We always hear about guard play winning in March. I don't know how true that actually is, but I like the idea of having Tony get going, and certainly I'd like to see more from DeSante Bowen. I know I've talked that up and down until I'm blue in the face, and he is just in such a funk right now. He's not really playing at all. He got
not playing much now.
Minutes. Played 3 minutes last night, Gary. Brock Harding is going to continue to learn. Played just over 11 minutes last night, but I just think Josh Dixon, Tony Perkins, the guard court, if those guys can show up and show out the rest of the way, and they sneak into the tournament, they can be dangerous, especially if Owen stays out of foul trouble. I know those are big ifs, but they're competing right now with Ben Krikke in a funk, with Owen Freeman struggling to stay out of foul trouble, and without getting anything from DeSante Bowen and very little out of guys.
Patrick McCaffrey.
Yeah, we haven't brought up Patrick.
I mean, there's a proven player that's, if he could start playing to his capability, that'd be a huge boost. I mean, he's played a lot of basketball in the Big Ten.
Gary, what do you say about Patrick right now? Like, I look at his stat line; it's just 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0, 0. Plays 15 minutes.
Yeah. It looks like he's just not comfortable and confident. I don't know. I'm not around him every day or in practice, but he's not playing nearly as well as he's a good player, and he's just he looks a little slower to me and not as explosive and
agreed
and lacking confidence. Not shooting the ball nearly as well as he's capable of, and when your shots don't go down, it makes you look maybe a little worse than you really are, but. So I agree with you. I think there's potential there for some people to contribute, and if they do, they could be a dangerous team. But that's got to happen.
Total lack of. I mean, that's what I've written down here in my notes. Patrick McCaffrey, no confidence, at least from my point of view. I saw him yesterday, and I think the epitome of this, the microcosm of what we've seen from Patrick of late. He passed up 2 open threes back to back, and that made me stop and think, like, when's the last time we've seen him take a 3? I don't even know the last time we've seen him take a 3.
Yeah.
And there was at one point early in the year where it was like, okay, Patrick might be their second or third best 3-point shooter behind Peyton. And it seems like all his shot attempts, he took 3 on Tuesday, made none of them. ended up with 0 points, 0 assists, 0 steals, 0 blocks, 3 rebounds, 0 of 3 from the field. I guess he did take a 3. I don't remember him taking a 3.
Yeah, he took one in the first half, I think, from the right corner and missed it.
Okay. It seems like all his shot attempts, for the most part, are where he's driving in and kind of just throwing up shots.
Tough twos. You usually don't get beat giving up tough twos. He's had a lot of tough two shots. Now he can make some, and he's made them in the past, but they're not ones that can bring you a lot of confidence because they're tough to make.
I also have written down here, Gary, Dembele shoots a lot.
Yeah.
He just gets the ball and he just shoots. He ain't making a lot. He just shoots.
Yeah.
I don't know if he's got the green light or there's sometimes where I'm like, what is he doing? Big moments in games, he'll shoot from anywhere. Now, I think he's got a good looking shot. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, there's definitely some potential there. It certainly looks better than the results you're getting.
Yeah.
But I think if he could just focus in on rebounding and giving us some defense off the bench and get some inside baskets, that outside stuff can come down the road. But we need some physicality and rebounding, and the biggest basket came on an offensive rebound that we kind of had the rebound and kind of threw it away and gave him an easy layup. I mean, you got to get that thing clean, and they've struggled rebounding all year, and it really, really puts a lot of pressure on your defense.
And that you're referring to the play Josh Dix throws it back in.
Yeah.
And that's a play where I know it's split-second decision. He doesn't have the ball cleanly. But if he could, and I know he's falling out of bounds, grasp that ball, call a timeout as he's falling. We saw Indiana do that in the first half.
Mm-hmm.
And you're right, that decided the game. Iowa, they get the ball back there, they may win that game on a 3.
Yeah. It was a game. That was basically the game. Yep.
Midwest buckets with the chat. Gabby Marshall, 4 big threes, as I mentioned earlier. She was phenomenal. And again, Iowa as a team, when you see them make 13 threes and only 3 of those were from Caitlin Clark, that's a good sign moving forward. Taylor McCabe made 2 in the second half. Jada Gyamfi made 1 to cross the 110 barrier. We saw Molly Davis make a 3. Kate Martin was perfect from 3. This is the team when Caitlin's not forced to make 5, 6, 7, 8 threes that I think can make a deep run in March. And, I won't hound on. I mean, I'll mention it because I think it's noteworthy. Caitlin Clark gets smacked in the side of the head late in the third quarter. You're up 20 against maybe the worst team in the Big Ten. I tweeted it out. She should never have come back in the game. She comes back into the game with a minute to go in the third. They're up 23. Then she doesn't come out until they're up 33 in the fourth with 4 minutes to go. And I've basically come to the conclusion, as everybody else has told me over and over again, I can't hear, don't you understand, Corey, that this is an entertainment business? I get that. But, I would expect at some point Coach Bluter to make a decision. If she injures herself in the final few minutes of a game, you're done. And for those of you that say, well, we need to see Caitlin play with these younger players, they're playing late in the game. I think about 5 minutes to go in the game tonight. I think it was a Falter, Clark, Kate Martin, Molly Davis, and maybe AJ Edgar. But for the most part, they're just playing their regular rotational players late in games where they're up 30 to 40 points. And I understand that a lot rides on Caitlin Clark in general. But if something happens to Caitlin, I would almost think that it would do them well to have some experience playing without her. I mean, you don't just throw the towel in if Caitlin's out, but if they've not really played at all with her on the bench, I mean, I would just think when you're up 20 to 30, that's an opportunity to let Molly Davis run the show, to let, even Kate Martin run the show a little bit, or Kenise Johnson coming off the bench and run the show. But anyways, as long as she stays healthy, it's not going to matter.
Yeah,
I'm the only one that's going to be talking about it. Again, when you win by 36, I'm build more enemies saying that than Lisa Bluter will by not taking her out of the game.
I think you're probably right.
Bob Hoffman with the comment, a question for Coach. What can the Iowa men do to improve their rebounding? Hard to rebound out of the zone. Last night, played a lot of zone against Indiana.
Yeah, I don't know if I necessarily agree with that. A lot of people say that in some cases it might be easier to rebound out of zone because you got your big guys near the basket. Whereas if you're playing man, they may be out farther on the floor. Some of it's fundamentals, just of being able to do a good job of screening out. Some of it's toughness, just relentless, go get the ball. And some of it's based on your defense. If you make teams shoot tough shots, bad shots, you got a better chance of rebounding. If teams are shooting point blank shots, then it's going to be tougher to rebound. In a lot of cases, it's going to go in. You're not going to have a rebound. So there's a lot of things that are involved in that, from fundamentals to really good defense. If your defense breaks down and you're rotating, now you get yourself out of position to rebound, things like that. And so there's more to it than probably meets the eye, but a lot of it comes down to being fundamentally sound and having a nose for the ball, go get it and be aggressive and know how important it is. It's an important stat. It's the end of your defense. Your defense is no good if you can't get the rebound.
So even when your bigs are pulled out in a man-to-man, they know who they're supposed to box out, right?
Yeah.
So wouldn't you prefer that over just having guys trying to find bodies in a zone?
I think, in a zone, you're just going to screen out the guys that are in your area. Now, we didn't play much zone, but I think it can be a problem. But I think a team that's a lousy rebounding team in zone is probably going to be a lousy rebounding team in man. They're not very fundamentally sound. Things like that. Their defenses are breaking down, and teams that play defense that don't break down and have to rotate and scramble and things like that, they're going to be a better rebounding team because they're in better position. They're not out of position. We already made an example of a guy leaves his man to go block a shot. Who's going to check his man out? And in a lot of cases, that's the guy that gets the offensive rebound and puts it in. So it all starts with a breakdown. So that's definitely part of it. And then fundamentally being a good team that can screen out and be physical. Obviously size helps, but even more case, just toughness and will are just as important.
I'm going to make a comment because I know there are no repercussions for me saying this. I don't think Mike Woodson is that good of a coach. There's nothing.
He may be done. There may be some changes in the Big Ten, and there may be one there because I could not believe some of the things they did down the stretch, and that's why I thought it was a tough game for Iowa to lose because Indiana was trying to give it to them with horrendous fouls and just some unbelievable turnovers. I mean, you just shake your head. It's dribble across half court line and then pick the ball up. I mean, you teach that in fifth grade. I mean, it boggles my mind. I do think that the teams that are up at the top have some guys that are doing good coaching jobs.
Before we get to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller, as everybody can see, I've got my RTI Threads shirt on. Shop RTI Threads at rtithreads.com. Also, Cooper DeJean, as he preps for the draft, you can still get some Cooper DeJean Iowa apparel. CD3lacesup.com. Benefit the NIL causes at large. Also, Aaron Graves, Carson Shire, Aiden Hall, Zach Lutmer. I'm slowly building my collection of RTI Threads merchandise. I'll be breaking out the Aaron Gravedigger Graves shirt here at some point. And also, Zach Lutmer's got a pretty cool logo. So check it all out, rtithreads.com. And let's go back to our next Iowa Smokehouse caller. We've got Tony. Tony, welcome.
I love that you lead me in with an awesome South Dakota-based company.
Absolutely. North Sioux City, but it is South Dakota.
It's South Dakota. Hey, I was thinking, this whole time I was on hold, I was like, I want to slide my slider on my webcam across because you made that comment about how we're sitting there shaking our head when you say stuff and stuff like that when people are in hold. So I wanted to slide the slider across so you didn't have to see me do that.
Just turn your camera off, Tony. That's all you got.
Well, I mean, it's got a little thing that I can go like this and then slide it back. Yeah. So, but I didn't know if you'd think I wasn't there. So
No, I feel like you guys are all like moderators in the queue. I just like if I have questions, I can just look down and I see you guys waiting in the
like
queue.
thumbs up or
Yeah,
shaking
exactly.
our head or something.
Exactly.
We're almost like your fact checkers, whatever, because they've got the people handing the sheets and stuff like that. So.
Absolutely, especially when Gary's not here because I don't have anybody else to keep me in line.
There you go.
Hey, a quick update because we were talking about it earlier. In Piscataway, the final was Rutgers 46, Penn State 61. That's a final, not a halftime score. 46-61.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I didn't expect Penn State to score 61 at halftime, Tony. But yeah, but 42. But that's a Rutgers score. Like we've seen that before.
They're not very good.
At some point, when does like Steve Peichel's done a good job there, and I like him. I think he's a good guy. But they don't have an offense, and they never have an offense, and they've had good offensive players.
Yeah,
they don't have good offensive players this year.
No,
well, not this year, but they never have a good offense, Gary. Like even when they had Geo Baker and
Ron Harper Jr.,
Ron Harper, and I mean they got guys that can score, but
they somehow have like 2 top-ranked recruits coming in next year. I don't know how, but
well, the one
they may be from New Jersey. There's a lot of players in New Jersey.
There's one of those kids that I was thinking is a legacy kid. Maybe I'm wrong on that. And then
I think one of them's Harper's is a Harper.
Is he? Okay.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. I agree with Coach here, and I disagree with you, Corey, on this. I think 6 teams is max in the Big Ten for the tournament. It's not that good this year.
I know you really you are saying this exclusively from the net rankings, right? That's what you.
No, I'm saying it based off the net rank and just watching teams play and watching other conferences.
Yeah,
like
I'm not going to disagree with that.
I still believe we'll get the same amount of bids as the Mountain West. I said it the other night. The Mountain West is a good conference, and I think they have 6 solid teams, and we have about 6 solid teams that were listed earlier. Unless some surprise team wins the Big Ten tournament, I think those 6 are pretty much it.
Tony, this is a question I'll ask you. Steeler Chick 46 wants to know about news on the Indiana point guard that went down late. Did you hear anything on that?
Haven't seen it. I kind of stopped watching Mike Woodson press conferences after he attacked Fran last year. I don't know if you remember that.
This was his first. Yeah, of course I remember that. But this was his first win against Iowa.
Oh, I know.
And as Gary said, they kind of backed their way into it. So
yeah, they tried to give it to us on a silver platter.
They sure did.
And let me say this, Spot in the chat is absolutely right. We've ripped on Pat. That was a beautiful feed to Peyton Sanford with 2 seconds on the clock.
Unbelievable
Great pass, Gary.
And I was going to comment on it, but you said it. I had it in my notes. Patrick passed up 2 in rhythm threes, 3 seconds apart.
Yep.
On that left wing. Yeah, left wing, closest to us. And he got it wide open. Could have took one, pump fake. Defender jumped out in front of him. He had another wide open look. Past that, it's like something's broken with him.
Here's what I wonder about right now with that. And I want to be very careful with what I say because I think Fran has done a pretty darn good job, regardless of what the haters will say. I think Fran's done a pretty good job managing family, especially when I compare it to how some other people in the Iowa athletic department have managed family with staff and roster. But I look at the stat line and I see Patrick McCaffrey get nearly 20 minutes. And I think to myself, okay, is that nepotism or is that just Fran riding a guy who knows he's better than he's showing right now?
And I guess I was going to kind of
I think he's got to play him. He's got to hope he plays himself out of it. They need him.
That was, I guess, my question that I was going to follow up. And I wanted to ask Coach, like, you see a player like that struggling. Do you just tell him he's got to play through it?
Yeah. You got, I mean, you try to encourage him and point some things out that he's done well. He's proven that he can play in his league. The people behind him have not done that. So I see why he's playing him. 20 minutes is not a lot of minutes, that he would normally be getting 30 plus. So he's getting a lot less than he would normally would. And, because of the way he's playing, I think Fran's doing about as good a job as you can with him. And I know he's hoping he's going to break out because if he doesn't, I think Iowa's in trouble.
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, I don't want to say I disagree with that, but I don't know. I maybe I have less confidence in him.
Well, who would you give
bouncing
those
out.
minutes though? Who would you give those minutes to?
Exactly.
I mean, I'd probably give him to Desante Bowen because I trust in the kid's upside moving forward. And I don't want to lose. I'm not saying you play the season with a view to the portal, but I don't want to lose that kid to the portal. Now, maybe Fran feels differently. Maybe he knows a lot. He probably does know a ton about the Desante Bowen situation that's influencing his decision not to play him. But I mean, I think the kid's got a lot of talent. And yeah, Patrick's got a lot of talent, but Patrick's also a senior. And one thing that, and maybe this doesn't apply for this situation specifically, but one thing, and these guys don't play the same position, one thing that Don Patterson has said over and over again as it relates to football is when he was coaching, if you had two guys that were basically performing at the same level, at the same position, he would typically go with the younger guy because that younger guy has a potential to improve more than the older.
I would agree with that too. I think the other thing is Patrick has proven that he can play in his league. Desante has not. He's, he is very talented, and some of it has to do with what's going on in practice. And like you said, they're different positions. Now, if they're both were guards, it might be a little bit different. But you play all those little guards, and then you're struggling defensively and rebounding and things like that. So I think he's hoping he's gonna break out of it because he's proven he could play before. It may not happen. It certainly hasn't happened so far, but I think for the team to go where they want to go, he's going to have to break out of it.
And I, for the record, I feel really badly for Patrick. Like, I'm not trying to rip on him because I have no doubt he's probably, I mean, we know he admitted it, and it was a brave thing to admit that he was dealing with anxiety, dealing with depression last year.
Mm-hmm.
You think about some of the circumstances surrounding that young man. He lost one of his best friends to cancer during a process where he was battling and recovering from cancer. No doubt his family, he's watched his parents deal with a lot of stress. He's watched his younger brother, deal with a tragedy in the past year. It's just been, and then he and Connor, I mean, everything that happens as student athletes and the pressure that are upon them. I'm not saying woe are the McCaffreys, but like I can see he might be dealing with some really strong demons in the world right now. And I feel badly for him I'm just speaking from a basketball perspective. I don't know. I just watch him out there. And when he is not playing well, Gary, he is giving next to nothing. It appears to me like when other guys are in there and not playing well, like when Tony's not playing well, which has been rare lately, he's at least giving you energy, giving you, he's attacking the glass. Patrick's not doing anything, it appears to me.
Yeah, no, I agree with you. He's it's been a trying season for him. There's no doubt about it.
Now, I will say I agree with you on one thing, Corey, and T. Hink just put it up. I do not think Caitlin should be playing as often as she does late in games that are decided. You had that tweet out there, and I've told you before, I agree. I don't get it because I think we even said that. What's a dumber philosophy? Bluter playing those starters to start the fourth quarter, Fran's 2-foul rule, and
what I think is just almost humorous about it is, to me, it's almost like the coaches are saying it's all or nothing. Either we get Caitlin or we're done. Like we're not really concerned about what happens after Caitlin because there isn't life this season after Caitlin. So Ryder. And like Brandon, there's a lot of people who view it this way. Get over it. Clark is part of the show. Yeah, a lot of people went over to Evanston and watched that game tonight.
But it's still a long season.
Northwestern women's basketball.
Yeah. I just got two questions real quick for Coach to close up. Number one, Coach, who's in charge of assembling like the non-conference schedule? Because a lot of talk this year nationally has been made about how weak some of these Big 12 teams are scheduling because they know that the Big 12 conference is so good and they don't have to play anybody but, the Eastern Illinois, the world and stuff like that in the non-conference because they know they're going to get enough good games in the conference. Who maps that out? Is it the coach? Do they have someone else who gets in charge of that?
They usually have somebody in charge of it. He might run some things by the head coach, but there's usually an assistant coach or director of basketball operations, somebody like that that's in charge of scheduling. That is not an easy job.
Oh, no. I'm not saying it's easy by any means, but I'm just saying, like, you got to challenge.
And some of those games are scheduled way in advance, and you schedule them. You think they're going to be pretty good to help your non-conference schedule, and then when you get to the season, they're not any good, and it hurts it. So, it's a crapshoot. It really is. But usually an assistant coach or a staff member will do that.
Okay, and then the one last thing I had was. What's your philosophy on like players giving fouls? And I want to give a yin and yang example in my head is Owen Freeman versus Laji Dembele. I feel a lot of Owen's fouls are soft and things like that, where I don't think Laji ever gets cheated out of a foul. And I was always brought up of, if you're going to commit a foul, you better make sure they're not going to score.
But Laji,
that's just me. But
you know what? Laji commits a lot of dumb fouls.
He does. I will not. But I just wonder, like, what is the like?
Don't foul.
Okay.
Don't foul.
Fair enough.
There's a rare time when a foul is okay, especially and when you're talking about it, you certainly don't want to give one for a 3-point play. But if you got, it's somebody that's, going to dunk the ball and he's a bad free throw shooter, then maybe you might take one there. But you got to be disciplined not to foul. So it's not something you just kind of flip the switch and one day I can do it and one day I can't. It's not as easy as it. You get into bad habits and then you get tentative and now you're not a very good offender and it's learning angles and staying down and not reaching, things like that where you get the dumb fouls and it gets you closer to foul trouble, gets the team closer to the penalty and to give you an example, Wisconsin has shot like 150, has made over 150 more free throws than the other team has shot. And if you don't think that's got something to do with them winning, you're crazy. I mean, that's a huge part. It would be the first thing on my scouting report playing Wisconsin. Don't foul them.
It seems like
they're going to shoot 40 free throws and you're going to beat you. They're going to make 35 of them.
It seems like Tyler Wall lives at the free throw line.
They all do.
Yeah.
They all do. They're well coached on shot faking and scoring off of 2 feet and not taking wild shots and they get teams in the penalty quickly. And then when you make a legit foul, when you're not in the penalty, then they're just taking the ball out of bounds. But now they're shooting free throws and they make them. So I can't tell you how many games they've won from the free throw line. And it drives me. I mean, it's just you watch teams like Michigan State comes in and just gets in the penalty the first 5 minutes of the game. I mean, on their court, it's just dumb. So easier said than done, though.
Were you going to say something, Corey? Sorry.
Tony, I wanted you to ask the question to Gary you brought up to me like a week
ago.
Yeah. About a rule.
So it's a rule thing. What game was that? It was a recent home game we had where we forced a 10-second call.
It was the Maryland game where they lost.
It was the Maryland game right at the end of the first half. Maryland had the ball with 36 seconds left. We forced a 10-second call. So then it's 26 seconds left. Iowa gets the ball. The shot clock only reset to 20 seconds. Even though you see, I'm like, I guess, are you following it or am I not wording it right?
So I'm not following you.
Okay. Go ahead. No. I could have worded it poorly. Yeah.
Tony, let me try.
Yeah, no, go ahead. No, go ahead.
I can speak, Gary. So my understanding, and I know exactly what you're talking about, Tony. Yes, Iowa, end of the half, Iowa presses and Maryland turns it over. It's a 10-second violation. So there's 26 seconds on the game clock. So you would think Iowa gets the last possession of the half, right? Shot clock's off. No, shot clock goes to 20 seconds on that type of a full court turnover. That's the term that was used, a full court turnover. The ensuing possession is a 20-second possession. So Iowa could not hold for the final shot. Did you know that was a rule?
No.
Yeah,
so you're trying to tell me that if you get a turnover, any time in the game, if you get a turnover and you get the ball out of bounds, it's a 20-second shot clock
in the back court. If you get a turnover in the back court, because they Iowa pressed them because Maryland got possession with 36 seconds left. Iowa forced the 10-second call with 26 seconds left.
Yep.
Yeah, I know
So
what you're
then
saying.
Iowa should get the
No,
ball.
I've never heard of that rule.
Yeah.
But that's
And because so I'm assuming I don't know if it's a brand new rule, but it was.
I think it is a brand new rule. I think it is a brand new rule.
Inbounding at half court, so they're trying to speed up the game, I guess.
which then to
Yeah.
me, and then when I told Corey when we were talking after the game, it's like, so then you really don't get that much benefit, obviously, outside of getting the ball. You're almost getting a losing benefit by not getting the full 30 seconds.
Yeah. I'm going to check that one out. I've never heard of that one.
Yeah.
I'm glad you could speak.
I'm going to call my buddy DJ Karsten and see if he can fill me in on that rule. Iowa boy.
Was he on the call last night, wasn't he?
He was a referee. Yeah, he was at that Purdue game tonight too.
The guy gets around. He's probably the best in the league, I think.
He's a real good official.
He is no, and I'll close with this. He's no Courtney Green, because I think it was mentioned about how you need to watch that replay. I don't know if you saw it, Corey, where Coach Collins went on the floor and ran in front of Courtney Green with 1.6 seconds left in that Purdue game to get tossed. It's live action. He ran and intercepted Courtney Green from running down the court. And then he went and shook Coach Painter's hand and all the other people's hands as he just left because he knew he was tossed. It's crazy.
How long left? How much time was there left in the game?
Just a second.
Yeah.
And who was it again that did this?
Chris Collins to Courtney Green. Yeah, Chris Collins did this to Courtney Green he was on the court.
Well, this is after Purdue shot 43 throws.
Yeah.
Northwestern shot 14.
You know what? Here's what I'll say. And I've made the comment before. Gary thinks Chris Collins would probably never consider coming to Iowa. I do believe that Chris Collins is the type of person that when he does something like that, it ought to be noticed. Fran does something like that. What are we going to see? We're going to see Pardon the Interruption tomorrow. I'll talk about Fran, the crybaby. No, this is Chris Collins doing it. A guy who's really respected and is usually a very much a cool head. And I'm going to go look that up after we're done here.
It wasn't. I will say this: he did go on the court as a second lap. There wasn't. He didn't last
it wasn't
long,
malicious,
and
or
it wasn't.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It's not like he went just crazy.
No,
he just let the guy know, hey, I don't think you did a very good job, and I'm out of here. I'm going to get back to the locker room a little
Absolutely
sooner.
What I would do. Absolutely what I would do.
Yeah, I think he's backing his players up because they battled. I mean, they battled. Nobody's going to give a Purdue game like that at their place. I mean, they had a great chance of winning that game.
Yeah. Kyle, I respectfully disagree with this. I've addressed it before. A player can get hurt at any moment in a game. Gary, when your best players wanted to play late in games where you're blowing a team out by 30, did you listen to the players or did you listen to? I
was never in charge of substitution. So
you never substituted when you were head coach at Regina?
Oh, no. I let my assistants do all the stuff, and I've never substituted.
Okay. All right. Well,
I can't remember that far back. That's a long time ago, Corey.
How old are you again? Who am I? Where am I?
Woo, man, that's like that's a long time ago.
It's been a couple of years.
That's about
all right.
25 years ago.
Last few minutes here, folks. We're wrapping things up. Final call on the call line. The StreamYard link's up in the description. Also, the phone line is open. Before we get to our next caller, I mentioned them earlier, but RTI Threads, check out the Cooper DeJean apparel, cd3lacesup.com. As Tony mentioned, they are a North Sioux City company. Also, Aaron Graves, Carson Shire, Aiden Hall, Zach Lutmer, a quartet of really skilled small-town Iowa guys. Check it out. Check out the website, rtithreads.com, and get your RTI Threads apparel and your NIL Hawkeye gear today, rtithreads.com and cd3lacesup.com. And I'll give them a shout out. They're working with Iowa baseball and the Swarm. I noticed that Brody Brecht retweeted something out about the cause. So if you're not following some of those baseball athletes, check it out. A lot of great stuff that RTI just had a lunch with Marty yesterday, and they are doing a lot of great things with Iowa athletics. So check it out, rtithreads.com. Let's go back to our Iowa Smokehouse call-in line. Thank you for calling Iowa Postgame with Coach Gary Close. Who's on the line?
Good evening. This is John.
Hey, John.
Hi, John.
Hello. Jordan Bohannon on one of his previous podcasts said the head coaching job for the University of Iowa was one of the least attractive jobs in the Big Ten. Where would you guys rank it at?
What a stupid thing. It's one of the stupidest things Jordan Bohannon's ever said, John.
That's a real good question. And that's one I'd have to think about a little bit, but I would say, it's hard to rank something like that. I mean, there's certainly a lot of positives coaching at Iowa. It's a wonderful school, great facilities, so on and so forth. It's not an easy job to recruit to because it's a small state with not a lot of players. You're not in a situation like Michigan and Ohio State and Purdue are with all those players in their backyard. So I'd say it's somewhere in the middle. I think that's probably would be a fair assessment. I think there's some other schools, some that I've mentioned, have got some inherent advantages that they don't have at Iowa. But I think Iowa does a great job at trying to get put their program in a position where they can compete with everything they can control. And obviously you can't control how many kids you got in your backyard. So, but I'd say somewhere in the middle would be my guess.
And John, let me quantify what I said, because I heard Jordan Bohannon make that comment, or I saw him make that comment. I'm not calling him stupid. I'm calling the comment stupid, simply because I think that was an effort to hype up his coach about how good of a job he's done at a job that's not easy to win at. I just think that's unfair to the program to make that statement. It's a better job than Penn State. All right. It's a better job than Northwestern. I think it's, even though Rutgers and Minnesota have both had some history in the tournament, I think it's better than both of those jobs. I think you could argue it's right on par with, even though Wisconsin, you know about Wisconsin, you guys have had some storied past even in recent decades, but I think it's right. And frankly, is it a worse job than Nebraska? I don't think so. I mean, Nebraska's a football school. As it relates to the new teams joining the conference, it's a better job than Washington, Oregon, and probably USC. I mean, that's such a hard one because of the demographic down there and it being in LA.
You have no players are in Southern California?
I'm just talking about the program. Cost of living. You want cost of living is at USC if you're a coach down at USC? We're talking about quality of a job.
Yeah. Well, what they're getting paid, that probably doesn't come into play.
No.
I think when you're talking about evaluating a program, you're evaluating your chances of winning. And do you have the resources to win? Because if you don't win, you're going to be gone. I think the biggest drawback to Iowa, they've got great high school players. They just don't have a lot of them. So they've got the farther you go to recruit, the less chance you have of getting them. Sure. Wisconsin has got Chicago 2 hours away, Minneapolis 4 hours away. They got half their rosters from Minnesota. So I mean, there are some advantages there, but
that's the big argument, right?
Yeah, totally. I mean, Rutgers has got how many players they got within 2 hours of driving? I mean, it's unreal. And I think as you're looking at a job, that's probably the first thing you're going to look at. I mean, obviously you need the resources, but you got to get players, and the farther you got to go, like a Nebraska, it makes it more difficult and more challenging.
On the plus minus stat, how much does the coaching staff look at that? How much credit do they give it?
You mean the plus minus in terms of the score and things like that? I don't think a ton, but analytics is becoming more and more prevalent in all sports. So I wouldn't be surprised if it's more used than in the past. But I think most coaches just try to get a feel for gut feeling of who's playing well and things like that. But I'm sure now with the all the analytics that are being involved in sports, it's used to some extent.
I've heard Fran mention we played lousy defense a couple of times. Would that be Beth Getz overstepping her bounds to go up to Fran and say, Fran, you're last in the conference in defense. you need to work on this? Would that be her overstepping?
The athletic director?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, probably. I think they probably sit down and evaluate the program in a lot of respects. But I think in terms of the technical part of the coaching part of it, I'm not sure she get involved with that.
A little bit different with the situation with Iowa football because of how she got involved, because it was Kirk's son, and you have different coaches specifically hired to coach different positions,
Right.
different sides of the ball. So I think there is a difference there.
Yeah.
Thanks, John. Appreciate the call.
Thanks, John.
All right. A couple quick fire questions before we say goodnight to everybody. Katie in the chat. Clark had another awesome game. Who are the other players who showed grit and improvement? I continue to be really impressed with what we see from Sydney Falter on a night in and night out basis. She's just going to give you such effort on the glass. What's amazing to me about Sydney is, what is she, 6 foot, 6'1", maybe? I don't even know that she's 6'1". And she's consistently giving you, I'm curious to see what her stats are on the season. For the season, Sydney Falter is averaging 6.5 rebounds a game. And Kate Martin's averaging 6 rebounds per game. They're not the biggest, especially when they go with Hannah Stolke at the 5. So guards being able to crash the glass. Kasheen Alexander was one of the best to do that. And she talks about one thing that Kasheen has said, Gary, we've had her on a few times here in recent weeks for the women's shows. She's talked about how one advantage she had as a guard in the Big Ten was guards aren't often taught to box out.
No.
So
it's like they're not taught to play post defense.
Exactly. So, that's one thing that she really prided herself on. We see that out of people like Sydney Falter and Kate Martin. T. Hink says, I'd take Chris Collins in a heartbeat. Would you, Corey? Absolutely. I got so much respect for Chris Collins. That could be a great story. Just the Chris.
I recruited Chris Collins.
I know.
I didn't get him, but we didn't get him. But we came a very close second, which doesn't mean anything.
Brant says, keeping me up past my bedtime, Uncle Gary.
Oh,
I think we lost Gary. Okay, I think we lost Gary. Give me a thumbs up, people in the chat, if you can still see and hear me. Okay. I guess I'm good, and everybody else, whatever. Pierre, Sydney Falter is 5'11". Okay, 5'11", and she does a really nice job crashing the glass. So, anyways, I'll try to get Coach Close back on here for the final couple seconds. It seems like Brant, his comment signaled nighty-night for Gary Close as well. So hopefully we get him back here in a second. Appreciate everybody responding in the chat. And let's see. I cannot pronounce this. I am so sorry. Sounds like a Hawaiian name. Ka'ania. I'm not going to try it. Iowa Hawkeye women basketball. Let's just go that. Go Hawks. Appreciate the the comment. And apparently listening maybe from Hawaii. Sounds like Bob. You think Caitlin breaks the record? Once she breaks the record, she'll get more bench time late in games. Boy, it's hard to say. I'd have to think that record is part of it. We've talked about. Last year it was a different narrative. It was all about triple doubles, and now it's about breaking the record. So I tend to think no, because the narrative will just shift to something bigger and better. I'm just not all for these individual accomplishments overriding what you do as far as what's best for the team and players from a health perspective late in games. But that's my opinion. Devontae, Fret, dream Final Four in the men's and the women's game. I think the women's game would probably be an easier one to predict. Although, are you talking about my dream Final Four or like the ultimate Final Four for like quality of stars? I mean, obviously people want to see Iowa in the Final Four because of Caitlin Clark. I think South Carolina, how could you not pick them? They're undefeated. They've lost like one game in their last 65. Stanford's really good. LSU is struggling a bit right now, but I think a lot of people would love to see an Iowa LSU rematch. So So that's that. Let me see if we can get. I believe we've got. Looks like Gary. Gary is trying to give me a call right now, and I believe he's calling the wrong number. So we'll see if we can get Gary. I think his computer crashed on him, so we'll try to get him on here. And I see Doug had a question for Gary before we leave. Yes, Louis, he took that timing to heart. Let's see if we can get Gary here. Gary, was it something Brant said?
Yeah, as soon as he got on, I knew I had to get off. But no, I must not have paid my electric bill last month. All the power's out.
Okay, I figured it was internet. I figured
No.
Jess Settles was behind it.
No, my computer died.
Okay.
I don't know why. Never has, but it did.
As long as you're still kicking, that's what's important. I really just have one more
Barely.
question for you, Doug. Doug wanted to. I'm sorry, I got that mixed up. Your name is Gary. This is Doug in the chat. Doug says, sorry I didn't ask this. What's Coach's thoughts about that last defensive play against Maryland that got him beat? It was the Peyton Sanford drive where he gave up to Jameer Young, and Jameer Young scored with the left hand. And Peyton Sanford was obviously really upset at the end of the game for giving up the left-handed shot.
Well, it was interesting. The last 3 buckets Maryland got, as I recall, were 2 threes. One of which was decently contested. The other one was wide open, and they gave up a layup. Peyton, and I think the coach purposely brought him up into the ball screen to get him to figure they're going to switch, and got around him and got a clean look. So, that's where you've got to cut the guy off and bring him back to help. Peyton's got to work on his lateral. Learning angles and things like that. He opens up too quickly and gives people straight line drives rather than angle drives, so to speak. And, obviously came at a real difficult time. But, you talk about last second plays and they always stick out, but there are other plays throughout the game, like the threes, the 2 possessions before, that are just as damning. That one's, the last one, so it sticks out more.
Last thing from me, and then I do see one final comment here from someone else to you, Gary. But I did have in my notes that I thought Iowa was really weak on closeouts. Is part of that because they were playing so much zone? But does it feel that way to you, like Iowa was just late to close out on 3-point shooters, including a big 3 there in the final minute that killed them?
You're talking the Indiana game?
I'm back to Indiana. Yep.
Yeah. I was surprised they went zone as early as they did. Indiana has not shot the ball very well all year long. They're at the bottom or near the bottom in 3-point shooting. And I think that's the reason why they did it. The problem is if it doesn't work, then you go to your man and well, wait a second, coach. You didn't think the man was good enough in the beginning. Why are we going? I mean, it kind of mushrooms. But I think the reason why they did it was probably because of, and rightfully so, that they're, the stats say that they're not a very good 3-point shooting team. The problem is teams can get hot, even bad ones, and or bad shooting teams. And I think they didn't close out quite as quickly or as earnestly as they should because I think the report probably was they weren't very good shooters and maybe caught them a little bit by surprise. Then once you give them a little bit of confidence, then, lousy shooters become average shooters and average shooters become better shooters. And now you're in trouble.
Brandon in the chat wants a Tom Davis story before bedtime. Can you think up one real quick on the fly, Gary?
Tom Davis story. I could think of a million of them. But I'll give you one real quick. When we were at Stanford, when we took over that program, it was in real difficult shape. It had not had a winning season in 25 years. We were trying to build the program up, and I found a kid I thought was going to be the guy that could really help us turn around. Tom went and saw him play with me. The kid was absolutely horrible. I mean, he was god awful. And I can remember driving back in the car and said, Gary, if you think that kid's going to turn our program around, you're crazy. And I called the kid up. I said, man, what the heck happened? And he gave me this thing about he had to work construction all day long. Anyway, we brought him into campus about 3 days later and showed him around. And I mean, this was a heavily recruited kid, 4.0 student. And Tom, was talking to him and said, hey, Todd was his name. Said, Todd, I love everything about you, but you can't play a lick. And I got to get better players. And I could tell Todd was ticked off. And, but he told him straight. And about 2 days later, Tom called me into the office and said, look at this. And there's a letter from Todd Lichty. And he said, Coach, thanks for having me down. I enjoyed walking around campus and so on and so forth. And, sincerely, Todd Lichty. And he said, P.S., if you don't think I'm good enough, I'm going to go somewhere else and I'm going to kick your you-know-what. And so we went down to watch him about a week later at this camp in LA, the biggest camp for all the kids on the West Coast. He ends up being MVP of the camp. And I mean, there's the top players. MVP. So now everybody's after him. I said, okay, Coach, you got us in this predicament. You better get us out. We got him back down again. And I said, hey, Todd, you showed me something there. And we all, and he took the scholarship. And I still think he's the all-time leading scorer in the history of Stanford basketball. Wow. He might have dropped a second, but he was a phenomenal player. And so anyway, that was our recruiting job on Todd Lichty, and he was a part of a freshman class. We ended up leaving and going to Iowa after his freshman year. But by the time they got to juniors, they made it to the NCAA tournament for the first time in like 45 years. So
was there any effort to get him to transfer to Iowa?
No. Tom was a big believer, and I agree with him totally that and I don't know if he would have come anyway, that when you leave a program, you don't take players with you. Okay. It's just that's not the right thing to do. So no, I think even if he wanted to, he wouldn't have let him.
Hawkeye
that's obviously changed now, big time. But yeah, but the rules will all change too. So right. That's part of the game.
Hawkeye girl in the chat says Coach Close is legendary. Real honor to hear his perspective tonight. Thank you, and I echo that, Coach. It's good to have you back here, and
you bet. Enjoyed it.
We'll enjoy next time. The Iowa men are not down and out yet, but a very important 3-game stretch. Any final comments on Friday's showdown against the Buckeyes?
Well, we've talked about it. It's a must win. I believe being a home game. I think it's real important to get off to a good start, get some confidence going, and see if they can't go on a little bit of roll. There's still some basketball left to be played, so it's they're a work in progress, and they've shown flashes. They just got to get a little more consistent. Hopefully, it'll happen in the next game.
Well, Gary, get some sleep. Appreciate your time, and we'll talk to you next time,
bet.
Sir.
All right, go Hawks.
Thanks, Coach. Gary Close, former Iowa assistant coach, Gary Close. And yes, the Hawkeye men back in action on Friday, taking on the Ohio State Buckeyes. As it relates to tonight, the Iowa women defeating Northwestern 110-74 behind another strong performance from none other than Caitlin Clark. She finished the night with 35 points, 10 assists, 6 rebounds, and she was 11 of 22 from the field, although she was not our RTI Threads player of the game. That award was handed down to Hannah Stolke, 17 points, 6 of 9 from the field, 9 boards. She looked like the type of post that could propel this team into April. And Gabby Marshall came up big, 4 threes. Kate Martin made a couple of threes, finished with 16 points, 5 boards, 4 assists. And you got 8 points from AJ Ediger late off the bench, 4 from Addison O'Grady, 4 for a falter, along with 7 boards. Taylor McCabe made a couple of threes. Kylie Feuerbach gave him some good minutes and 2 points. And we also saw Sharon Goodman play 3 minutes, did not score. Same can be said for Kenise Johnson. She played 4 minutes, did not score. Molly Davis, quiet night, made 1 3-pointer as one of 5 starters in this game. So again, the Hawkeyes defeating Northwestern 110-74. They'll be back on the hardwood on Saturday. They'll take on Maryland. Big game, folks. Another primetime Saturday night game on Fox. That should be really, 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 really fun. I don't know that we have Gus Johnson on the call for that one, but regardless, it will be a primetime showdown. And we're missing college football on Saturdays, right, folks? So we're going to enjoy being able to watch some Iowa women's basketball. Want to give One final shout out to Iowa Smokehouse. They've been sponsoring our call-in line throughout the evening. If you've not visited their website and browsed their immense selection, do check it out. It's iowasmokehouse.com. Use the code Hawkeyes at that website, iowasmokehouse.com, to see how tasting is believing and get better quality snack for whatever event you're hosting. Check out why Iowa Smokehouse is the best brand in the Midwest with their beef jerky, their meat sticks, their steak bites, and more. And if you spend $50 on any order, you'll get free shipping right to your doorstep at iowasmokehouse.com. Tasting is believing. Let's see. Before we go, that's one thing I don't want to forget. Facebook. I brought this up several times. I'm sure people are getting tired of me bringing this up. But please, if you're not doing this already, making a real concerted effort to make this happen, head over to From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Facebook, all right? I put the link in the description. I'll just share my page here, share the my tab here on my screen so everybody can see what the page looks like if you haven't seen it before. This is the Facebook page. Do check it out. Simply click the like button / follow button and help us get this page built. We've got, 150 people still watching this evening. We've got over 7,000 people regularly watching, or I shouldn't say a lot more than that, but 7,000 subscribers on YouTube and still short of 500 followers on our Facebook page. Please follow From the Hawkeye of the Storm on Facebook. Click the link in the description to do that. Thank you, Carrie, for the compliment on the show, and appreciate you being here as always. Also, before we go, I do want to take a moment to thank Ascent Nutrition. They have been with us for such a long time, and they're still working hard in the health industry and the nutrition industry, whether they're talking about their lion's mane mushroom, their agarikon mushroom, maybe it's their organic coffee. All of it's great and available at goascentnutrition.com. I'll briefly show you the website here. Start your ascent today with their supplements and their many products that can benefit you and your family, even your pets in some cases. They've been featuring their lion's mane mushroom, their agarikon mushroom. They've also got their pine pollen tincture, their humic and fulvic acid. All this stuff is great, and it's available to you with a 15% discount. Start your ascent today at goascentnutrition.com and see which option best suits you and your needs. Again, that's goascentnutrition.com. All right, folks, last call on the phone line. I don't see anybody else there. We appreciate Coach Close hanging out with us this evening. Let me check the text line before we go. Doc in Sioux City says, don't forget the end of the season conference tournament and how they could play in the NCAAs, that could play into the NCAAs. Always an opportunity to play into the field once you hit March, but certainly hope that the Iowa men can position themselves better down the stretch. All right, I'm just checking off everything, making sure we didn't miss anyone. It has been a pleasure as always, and I'll be back with you tomorrow for something, right? We're talking Hawkeye football, Hawkeye basketball, basically every day. And then on Friday, it will be post-game coverage following, post-game coverage Saturday with Kenise Johnson-Etienne. Wow. Kasheen Alexander. Starts with a K at least. Kasheen Alexander and myself will be talking Iowa, Maryland Saturday night. And then Friday night, the night before, it's Iowa and Ohio State on the men's side over on FS1, 6 p.m. Central Time for the tip. Appreciate Iowa Smokehouse sponsoring the show and the call-in line. RTI Threads for being with us. Get your RTI Threads gear today. Brad Van Meter and his team down at State Farm, Iowa Floor Covering, Go Ascent Nutrition. We need them all. They all help make this show and this platform go. This platform, this show, this podcast will be available via podcast, via audio on your favorite podcast platforms later this evening. Have a good night's rest, folks. Be safe tomorrow, and we will talk to you tomorrow. Have a great night.